We now return to the cold truth, where we have shown that Roe v. Wade is not only not a law, but it never gave permission to American women to have abortions any more than its removal took that away. Let us now explain point number 6. Saying that pregnancy is exclusively the fault of men is a pernicious lie. Any attempt to put the blame solely on men would be, ironically, ignoring the role that women have in pregnancy too. There are several facts to be understood here. First, there is a lie that has hung over our society like the sword of Damocles since long before the time when Damocles would have lived, that sex is for men and men alone. A recent study surveyed 10,000 married women of all major races, political parties, age groups, and religions, each of whom was in her first marriage and had at least 2 children, and asked them numerous questions about sex. We will mention several of these results here. One of the survey questions asked if sex was more for men or for women. An outstanding 65% answered that sex was mostly for men, while 15% said it was mostly for women. Only 20% said it was a mutually supportive act. Other subsequent questions asked them if they would be willing to say no to their husbands if they demanded sex, of which only 15% of that 65% said that they would be willing to say no. In other words, about 43% of married women said they give their husbands sex just because they said they want it. Another question asked the same women whether they would be willing to have an abortion that was not medically required. Of that 43%, more than 50% said yes, which is about 22% of the total. At the same time, of the 35% who said that sex was either for themselves or for both partners, only 29% said yes, which is about 12% of the total. That means that women who think they have to have sex just because their husbands say so are 4 times as likely as women who enjoy sex to abort a child. They also make up about 60% of women who are willing to have an abortion. In other words, abortion does not support feminism, it actually supports chauvinism. What ultra-feminists claim gives women power is actually used to keep women down. It encourages abusive relationships because it allows any unwanted offspring to be eliminated, so there is no need for spouses to be sexually safe. Also, no matter what the tabloids may say, unless this grouping is far from representative, only about 34% of women would even be willing to have an abortion. Second, women have long since fallen back on the fact that no matter who benefits from sex, men need more of it. In a society that tells women to give everything, and yet still at the same time that giving anything would reduce their status as strong and independent, women take peace in killing fetuses that were implanted by their husbands and extramarital partners because men are the ones who enjoy sex more. In the same group from before, 73% of the sex is for men group say they do not enjoy sex, while 20% say they only enjoy it sometimes. Compare that to 19% and 7% of the sex is for both group, and 0% and 1% of the sex is for women group. In all, that means that 51.25% of women interviewed said they never enjoy sex, while 14.55% say they only do sometimes. That second number is irrelevant, since it is hard to imagine, not because it is high, but because it is low. It is hard to imagine anyone enjoying the same activity every single time, no matter what. Still, this stat implies that more than half of married mothers do not like sex. Out of that 51.25%, more than 90% answered yes when they were asked, "Is your husband always sexually stimulated?" The other 48.75% answered yes only 9% of the time. That means women who think their husbands are always on are more likely to say they dislike sex than women who do not think that. What is the difference? Studies performed by Dr. Sarah Hunter Murray, PhD, a marriage and family therapist and the author of Not Always in the Mood, The New Science of Men, Sex, and Relationships, are very telling. They reveal that, out of her target group, the results unilaterally showed that female sex drive and male sex drive have the same high and low potential. To quote Dr. Hunter Murray, not only is the idea that men have higher sex drives an oversimplified notion, but it's really just not true. Multiple studies show that men's and women's sexual desire levels are more similar than different. She continues, if there's something about the way you experience desire that falls in line with the stereotype, that's fine, but so many of us fall outside of these limited boxes. There are men whose interest in sex ranges from low to none to very high, and it's the same for women. As humans, we vary. As long as your sexual expression is in a healthy way that feels good and right for you and your partner, chances are your experience is normal. In the same study, Justin Garcia, PhD, Executive Director of the Kinsey Institute at Indiana University, comments, our sexual interest is driven by many factors, including not only biology, age, and use of medications, but also by situation, for both men and women. Sexual attitudes are affected significantly by societal and religious attitudes. If you've been told that expressing your sexuality is bad, over time, that will impact your sense of whether you should be doing it or not. With all of this, it is clear there is a distinct impression in the minds of many women that they are not allowed to enjoy sex. However, that does not mean that enjoyment of sex is impossible. For those with religious background, accepting that sex in marriage is a divine institution means that refusal to enjoy it for either sex on grounds of religion is a direct slap to the face of the God who created it. That is, again, not to say that everyone is required to like sex every time, only that saying, I can't enjoy sex because God said I can't, is blasphemy, and saying it also increases the chance of a woman, or a man for that matter, devaluing the divine institution of marriage, the divine gift of pregnancy, and the divine responsibility to care for one's offspring. For those who are not religious, disliking sex on a moral point is even more unnatural. With these statistics and carefully garnered sociological research, at least 3 conclusions can be easily derived. 1. Women cannot blame unprotected sex on men. Men are not the only creatures who enjoy sex. 2. Women who do not enjoy sex are significantly more likely to get an abortion than women who do. Therefore, women, or men for that matter, enjoying sex is not the problem. 3. Socioeconomic factors which were not specifically revealed in these surveys aside, women use their lack of enjoyment of sex as an excuse to commit abortions, but it cannot be used as a reason. We must now dispel the equal but opposite lie that men can't possibly understand and therefore should have no say or influence on the conversation of abortion. As most of the pro- or anti-abortion laws were put into place by men, and as men are part of the life creation process, it is impossible to justify the actions of half the population that dismiss the other half. That was true when we mentioned Aristotle and his anti-feminine beliefs. It is true when men push down women in every field of life. It is equally true when women push down men. Saying sexism from women to men does not happen, or that it cannot happen, is the same as saying that those with darker skin cannot be prejudiced against those with light skin, simply because those with light skin have been prejudiced against those with dark skin within living memory. Females pushing down males as not understanding is no different than a male saying that a female cannot understand what having an abortion will do to her body because only men know about science. It is obviously false, and so too is the belief that a man cannot understand what a woman is going through. In modern society, men are increasingly losing out to women on the grounds that women say it is their turn to shine, not realizing that in no way do they shine more than by living up to their biological potential, and in no way are they more dim than by trying to be men which ultimately denies their sex having any meaning whatsoever. The conversation surrounding pregnancy and abortion is often framed within a woman's right to choose. However, it becomes problematic when the narrative suggests that a man cannot possibly grasp the complexities of pregnancy and its implications. This perspective overlooks the reality that many, if not most men, are deeply invested in the outcomes of their relationships and the lives that are potentially created from them. It is fundamentally unjust to assert that a man lacks the capacity to empathize with the gravity of an annulled pregnancy or to appreciate the emotional and ethical dimensions tied to the decision of abortion. While the woman ultimately bears the physical and emotional burden of pregnancy, a man's emotional investment and moral concerns cannot be dismissed as trivial. They deserve acknowledgement and respect. Furthermore, asserting that abortion is solely a woman's issue dangerously diminishes the shared responsibility inherent in reproduction. If a man plays a critical role in the creation of a life, he should also have a critical voice in discussion regarding its termination. The decision to carry a pregnancy to term or to pursue an abortion invariably impacts both parents, and thus it is only fair that a man be considered in the conversation. Ignoring a father's perspective not only marginalizes his feelings, but also propagates a narrative that suggests men should remain passive in matters that fundamentally concern them. By excluding male voices from the discourse on abortion, we inadvertently reinforce a hypocritical stance that undermines the broader principles of equality and shared responsibility that feminism advocates for. Ultimately, fostering a dialogue that includes both women's and men's perspectives on pregnancy and abortion will lead to a more inclusive and equitable understanding of these critical issues. It is true that men do not have the blessing of being pregnant, of being able to bring life into the world, of having the kind of bond with a child that only a woman can feel. On the other hand, a woman cannot have the same kind of bond as a man. Men have protective instincts toward their women and children that have been shown time and time again to be fundamental to the growth and development of the child. This instinct is fostered through a man's wife's pregnancy. Failure of couples to marry before having sex subtracts from a man's responsibility to protect the woman and her children, which is as important for him as it is for her. Many a man has watched on with concealed tears as his wife struggles through pregnancy. She may be the one who throws up in the morning, but he is the one who rubs her back. She may lose sleep at night because of the baby, but he loses sleep because of his worry for her. She may be the one who feels cravings, but he is the one who has to figure out how to get the food she wants. He may even have to eat weird combinations because that is all she can stand the sight and smell of. She may have to eat for two, but he is the one who, when money is short, will choose to not eat at all. She may be the one to push out the child, but he is the one who will remember every bitter tear that rolls down her cheek, every heart-wrenching wail that comes from her mouth. She may be the one who is carrying the life, but he is the one carrying her. At least, that is how a true man is. For those who believe the man should not be involved in the choice to kill his own offspring, listen to these 3 real-world testimonials of men whose wives or girlfriends chose to get an abortion without their consent, a right I should say that is legally but not lawfully protected by Supreme Court precedent. Here is the first. How do you mourn a child you never held? How do you navigate a marriage built on trust that now feels like a facade? Since that day when I learned of my wife's decision to end our pregnancy, my heart has been heavy with anguish and betrayal. My dreams of parenthood were snatched away without a second thought. I awaited the arrival of our long-anticipated child, only to discover that, for my wife, it was a decision made alone, a choice that was meant to be shared. The emotional whirlwind I've been thrown into is unlike anything I've ever experienced. Each day feels like a test of resilience. I oscillate between sorrow, anger, and a profound sense of loss. The deep connection I felt to my child even before their arrival is now coupled with a stark reality. I've lost not only my only child, but the trust in my wife too. She made a decision that impacted both of our lives, yet chose not to involve me. A decision that felt like she stripped away part of my identity, part of our shared future. In the days that followed, I've come to realize that I no longer recognize the woman I married. How could she dismiss not just my feelings, but also the life that was blossoming within her? Each moment spent together feels heavy with unspoken words, reeking of an unbridgeable divide. I find it hard to imagine continuing a life together, given that this experience has irrevocably changed the foundation of our relationship. I've thought long and hard about what this means for us moving forward. Since the loss of our child has been treated so lightly by the person I trusted most, I feel compelled to protect myself and seek accountability. Thus, I've made the excruciating decision to pursue a divorce. While some might dismiss my pain, I've begun contemplating the possibility of legal action. Can one truly quantify the weight of such loss? It feels foreign and surreal to think about suing my wife for the death of our child, but how does one seek justice when the depth of your grief remains unrecognized? I wish I could turn back time to reclaim the hopes we once shared and to have had the opportunity to make this choice together as partners should. This betrayal reaches far beyond just our marriage. It strikes at the core of what it means to create life and share profound, intimate experiences as a couple. For now, all I have are memories of dreams that will never come to fruition, replaced by a hollow ache in my chest. As I stand at this crossroads, my heart continues to ache for the child we would have welcomed into this world. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I will fight for my right to grieve, and for the voice that was taken from me. We will say as an afterthought, the man lost this case. Lost, because he is a man. They were divorced, and he was forced to pay 50% alimony, in part to cover the cost of her lawyer, whom she later married. This was several years ago, and she has 2 children with the man who took everything from her first husband, and he is unable to move on. This is blatant sexism that ultra-feminists would declare is their right. Here is the second one. My lifelong girlfriend, my childhood sweetheart, the woman I envisioned building a life with, made a decision, an exceedingly personal choice. She had an abortion, and now I am left to question everything we stood for together. Growing up, our faith was a cornerstone of our relationship. We bonded over our shared values, our aspirations for the future, and the dreams of a family that mirrored our upbringing. We promised each other we would navigate life's challenges together, guided by our beliefs and our love. When she confided in me about her pregnancy, my heart swelled with both anticipation and concern. The thought of bringing a child into this world was both terrifying and exhilarating. We had discussed our plans for the future, and like any couple, we had laid out our hopes and dreams, but I never thought we would arrive at this crossroads. The news of her decision hit me like a tidal wave. The disbelief quickly morphed into anger and confusion. How could she reconcile such a choice with the values we profess to hold dear? I imagined our future together, filled with laughter and milestones, yet I felt the picture crumbling in front of me. Now the weight of uncertainty clouds my thoughts. I find it impossible to envision a future where trust can be easily reconstructed. As I contemplate my next steps, I realize the difficulty of moving forward. The feelings of betrayal persist, lingering like an unwelcome shadow. How do I reconcile the love I feel with the loss of trust? The trust that she would consult me, share with me, and honor the values we committed to together. I know this is a time for healing, not just for her, but for me as well. I need space to process these complex feelings, to come to terms with what has happened and what it means for my future. The road ahead feels daunting, but I believe it's a necessary journey toward understanding myself, my beliefs, and ultimately what I want in love and life. And the third, As I sit here in the silence of my empty home, memories flood my mind like a relentless tide, pulling me under. My wife cheated on me with a younger man after she was already pregnant with my child. The day my wife chose to abort our child is etched in my memory with an agony that feels as fresh as if it happened yesterday. I would have welcomed our child into this world with open arms, even if my wife had chosen to walk away from our marriage. The love I felt for her had started to fade after her affair, but my desire to be a father never wavered. I wanted to create a life filled with laughter, joy, and the kind of warmth that can only come from family, but instead I was left holding nothing but the shards of a broken dream. Each new chapter of her life, each Instagram post of her with her new husband and their child, is a dagger to my heart. It's difficult not to feel that her actions were a form of retaliation, of vengeance for my not being good enough, young enough, rich enough for her. How could she move on so easily, creating the family we once envisioned, while I am left in the shadows of my own pain? In unguarded moments, I find myself questioning the authenticity of our love. Was it all just a ruse? The whiplash of emotions is dizzying. Love, anger, betrayal, a confusing cocktail that crashes over me in waves. She has a new life now, one that I can never be a part of. My curiosity battles with sorrow every time I see a picture of her with their child, awash in a happiness that we once shared. I sought justice, but the court seemed indifferent to my plight. My pleas for understanding, for recognition of my love and longing, went unheard. I was simply a man in a divorce file, reduced to a statistic in a system that frequently overlooks the complexities of male emotion in order to not seem sexist. There is a profound isolation that comes with heartbreak, one that leaves me feeling invisible, caught in a whirlwind of grief while she builds a beautiful new life without me. I wonder if she ever thinks of what might have been, or if my pain is merely a forgotten echo in the chambers of her memory. The weight of my sorrow sits heavy, and as I navigate this abyss, I yearn for closure, yet find myself trapped in an ever-deepening chasm of unfulfilled dreams and lost love. In conclusion, the only time that men should not have a say in abortion is, ironically, when women should have a say, namely, the rare but horrible cases of rape and incest. Even cases where one or both lives are on the line should not ignore the man's feelings, though he will make his decision with a heavy heart. We make a demand that law-abiding citizens join the dozens of petitions fighting for men's rights in a nation that has fundamentally declared men second-class citizens. The existing law that men have no right to prevent their wives from having an abortion is as unjust as a law that forces a woman to have children just because her husband wants them. However, there is never, and we repeat never, a time when it is okay for a father, husband, brother, or other relative, male or female, to force a woman to get an abortion. It is never okay to say, "We don't want this child, you need to kill it." It is never okay to dismiss a life just because one's daughter, wife, sister, whatever, is the one who is pregnant. Those who pressure their women to get abortions are the guilty parties, members of the conspiracy, murderers. Next time, we will show that abortion is usually requested by the ignorant, but that does not excuse it. The cold truth should be obvious.